Hey everyone, Tinsley Myrick, Remax of Orange Beach. There's some changes coming up in closings and buyers with mortgages and whatnot. So this video is geared towards the sellers. Most of these changes do have to do with the buyer, but they will affect the seller, or they could affect the seller. I went to a training session today it was led by Sherry Weaver of National Bank of Commerce, a big condo lender down here, and Lisa Hannah Walker, who owns Clear Title and does all of my closings. So these are two people that I respect, and I was glad to attend a training session led by them. So here's the handout they gave us, and they call it the TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosure. This was supposed to go into effect August 1st, but it's been extended to October 3rd, 2015, to give everybody a chance to get used to everything. So just to start off, this act that changed these rules, they're supposed to protect the buyer or the consumer. There are unintended consequences, so it's my job to let you know about things that could come down the pike, especially if we close after October 3rd. The act that changed all of this is called the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, and it comes from the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And because of some unscrupulous lenders putting fees down on their good faith estimate to buyers, and then them changing at closing, they made these rules to protect them. I don't deal with lenders like that, but so what it's going to cause is the lenders are going to have to overestimate some things, so otherwise they'll have to eat it. So that affects the buyer. What affects the buyer that affects you are a couple of things. Okay, if there's a change in the APR, it's going to have to extend things 3 days. So now you're thinking, what's going to cause a change in an APR? Well, items that affect the APR are origination, points, processing, underwriting, flood certification, prepaid interest, settlement/closing fee. So if something gets changed in underwriting at no fault to the buyer, the loan officer, the closing agent, the realtors, the buyers, the sellers, it can be totally out of everybody's control. If it changes it more than 0.8%, then some extra days have to be added on, and I'll explain that why in a second. So they want us to now do 60-day closings. My eyes got about this big when they said that, because I don't want, as I'm representing the seller, I don't want your property tied up for that long. So I came up with a good idea that perhaps we can put some sort of clause in our counter if the buyer's getting a loan, that if there's an APR change at no fault to the buyer, we will extend 3 days or 5 days, whatever, which is much better than asking for 60. As most of you know, down here we do 30-day closings now. A whole lot less if it's cash. These closing companies down here are able to close things pretty quick. And if you're dealing with a condo lender down here, they don't mess around and they get things done. So now they're asking for 60. So I'm thinking if we just maybe do 45 and add a little clause, if there's an APR change, then we'll extend. Otherwise, if you have a closing date that says 60 days, say we get a contract tomorrow and it closes in 60 days, the contract doesn't say that we can close early, because both people have to agree and sign off on it in order to close early. You can't just automatically close early. So I don't want to, if everything's ready in 45 days, and the buyer says, well, I don't want to close until 60 days, then he'd be able to do that. So I thought maybe it'd be a better solution to add a clause, and I'm going to come up with something and send it to those guys, the Clear Title and National Bank of Commerce, and see if they think that'll work, and see if we can shorten that a little bit, because I think that's in the best interest of the seller. The other thing is, let me show you these. the HUD as we know it is going away. If you bought property, you know what a HUD is. It's the closing statement. That simple form is going away. So here are the things that the buyer is going to get. Instead of getting a good faith estimate at the beginning, they get a loan estimate. Good faith estimate is over. Okay, this thing is, you know, pretty lengthy. Now when it comes to closing, here's what the buyer gets. Now I'm not even going to be able to see this. It's called a closing disclosure. It's got multiple pages. This goes on and on. It's like 5 pages. There's another one for the sellers. Yeah, the seller and the buyer are going to have 2 different closing disclosures, which what used to be the HUD. So you as the seller is going to get something completely different. I don't have one with me, but I'm going to try to email it to you when I send this video to you. So, all right. The other way that a closing could be extended is there's this rule now that the lender has to send this closing disclosure with all the closing company's charges, all the lender charges, to the buyer at 3 days before closing. So where changes used to happen at the closing table, you know, where you know, a day before or something, they could whip it out and make the changes and everybody's happy. Well, now the buyer has to have 3 days to review. Now most of our HUDs, which will be closing disclosures, are emailed out. There are still some people who don't email. So if it's mailed out, then they get 3 days for it to be mailed to them, and then 3 days beyond that to look it over and let everybody know if there needs to be changes. So the title companies and the lenders are all learning and going to training classes and trying to educate us on all this. I am by no means an expert, but this of course is going to fall on all of us to explain to you as the clients things that could happen. So I just wanted you to know, give you a heads up that there are changes and they're totally out of our control. Everybody's going to have to do this. If you have any questions, email me, text me, call me. I'm here for you, and if I don't know, I will definitely find out. Thank you, and talk to you soon.